the stuff we bash onto each other about when we're riding.
Righto, there's lots going on in cycling, so I thought we'd get JC in the building. We're going to go through some of the hot topics at the moment. Welcome, Jesse. What are we talking about today?
Remco, he looks like a different human being. It was kind of teased out because before the Vuelta he was there was like photos on Instagram and stuff, and you're going, holy crap, he's lean. He's lean, and the tan he had, he looked like a different rider. So he has completely transformed what he looks like, transformed his body, and it looks like really it only happened over basically the first half of this year. It looked like over a 6-month period he has transformed himself, and I wanted to just chat about how he potentially has done that and how it relates to training camps in particular, because there's big things that go on at these training camps which I think a lot of people aren't aware of.
So that's what I was kind of hoping to ask you a little bit is this altitude camp stuff okay. So this is where my head gets lost with the altitude camp things, because my thought on the altitude camp was that it would make you better at altitude. That's why you went and did it. But there seems to be guys doing it with weight loss as a goal of these camps. Is that right in saying? Or?
Yeah, pretty much. So let's just leave. I know Jay Vine is a big fan. He did an interview with you and he said he credits a lot of his gains to the altitude camps. I just want to leave the altitude camps, the altitude out of it for a sec, because I think it's the camp portion which is where big gains can be made. So when a pro rider says they're going on a training camp, it's firstly not that team camp that happens at the start of the year with the entire team. What you're seeing now is it'll be a training camp will be a smaller group, so it could be as little as 3 or 4 riders. Victor Campanats did a really good video documenting a camp he did staying at an altitude hotel, and it was, I think, 3 riders and 3 staff, and that was it. So it's these smaller groups that go away. But calling it a camp isn't really reflective of what it is. It's more of, you could pretty much think of it as a scientific training intervention, because that's the level of detail and of supervision that goes on at these things. So you might have, let's say, 6 riders go away. Ineos do this quite often as well. You'll see squads for different races going away. So they might have 6 riders, and going away with those 6 riders, you might have a chef, a mechanic, a physio, masseuse, a soigneur, and then one other, maybe 2 soigneurs. So for 6 riders, you might have 5 team staff. You will also probably have a team doctor as well, because what they're doing when they're going away is it's a medical intervention. Now, I don't want to go into the whole doping thing, because that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying it's heavily, heavily monitored. And coming back to Remco and the body transformations, is it allows riders to do things which would just be too risky to try when they're at home. So they're basically able to push the limits of everything. So of their nutrition, of their training. I mean, you look at his tan, he was clearly doing 6-7 hour days on the bike. Things that if he was at home, he wouldn't be able to recover from. Their nutrition, they can really push the limits of how much they're cutting back. Things that if you and I tried to do, it would not work. Our ferritin would tank. Our stress hormones, cortisol, will go through the roof. We'd probably lose 3-4 kilos of muscle, and we'd be absolutely cooked. But when they're away on these camps, the amount of supervision they have means that they can push that line between overtraining and becoming unhealthy, but do it in a really healthy way where they're not losing fitness, they're maintaining their muscle, and it allows them to, they can strip, huge chunks of body fat and not fall in a heap physically. And I think that's only possible with these highly, highly supervised interventions. They'd be getting blood tests before the camps, and then probably once a week. If they've got a doctor there, they'd be doing blood tests, and then also non-invasive methods of tracking their blood oxygen levels. Everything like that is getting measured. So It's a totally different ball game, and that's why they
You wonder, like, why do people want to do this? Like, you're turning into just like lab rat, like science experiment humans.
Mm-hmm.
You know.
Mm-hmm.
And I often you hear interviews with guys talking about sort of the GC rider, and obviously it's the GC rider that then has to take that level to the next sort of that extreme, I suppose.
Yeah, they really do. And you saw that at the Tour this year, Tour de France, between Vingegaard and Pogačar. You look at, so I think Remco and Pogačar, when just looking at them physically, were quite similar. They weren't that, like last year, they weren't that lean. Pogačar looks like a 16-year-old. He doesn't look like that muscly. Remco doesn't look like that now. He's transformed himself. Yes. And my prediction is that Pogačar will rock up to the Tour next year and he will look different. Yeah. He can't get away. You looked at Vingegaard in the race. He's literally a set of lungs on a stick. His body was just... There was nothing on him that he didn't need. And I think for Pogačar, he's going to have to go down that route next year if he wants to be competitive on those longer climbs and the steeper climbs. He's going to have to shed weight. It's just, he's not going to be competitive unless he does. And I think my prediction is we will see a Remco-esque transformation for Pogačar next year. I don't think he has a choice if he wants to keep up with these guys that are coming through this year.
I've got nothing to add. That's just terrifying.
It is.
Like, it's
scary.
Yeah. All right. So what are your thoughts? Remco, stripped, lean. Are we going to see Pogačar that sort of size next year? Let us know.
Oh, did you see the photo? There was one photo that stood out of Remco, and a photographer had taken a photo of him when he's taking a step, and it was of his legs and of his rear leg, and he's got this vein running from his ankle up his leg along the outside of his knee, and you're just going, holy, this was not the boy Remco from 2 years ago.
Let's chat a little bit about some gear. So this week we will hopefully see the launch of the new Canyon bike. We're pretty sure it's going to be a Canyon Ultimate, which, check out the link in the description below, is discussed a little bit in my endurance bike video. And okay, my kind of take on this, the first thing I want to talk about is we are now going to be looking at potentially a $14,000 endurance bike. What do we think?
I think, who's buying the Ultimate, really? I don't, okay, besides Jay Vine, who cares about the 300 gram weight difference, which I'm guessing is probably around that between the Ultimate and the Air Road. No one's buying the Ultimate, really. Everyone wants the Air Road. I mean, besides, if you go on YouTube and you type in Canyon Air Road seat post, everyone's doing videos about how the seat post is issues, it's a warranty thing. But besides that, like, it's a really bloody good bike. Very well reviewed, rides very well. I just don't understand the appeal of the Ultimate, really, unless you...
Oh, look, I'm the market. See, the way I look at this, right, I am the market for that bike, because I looked at my sort of bike history stuff. I really liked those lighter version bikes. Now, we're not talking about a dramatic difference between them, but I do think there is a difference in the way these bikes ride, because the way an aero bike feels on the road, especially when they start using that rear wheel cutout thing, I feel at my limited wattage that I find that the reaction, the compliance, everything you get coming through that rear wheel is greater. And I look at that Ultimate, I look at other bikes like that are trying to do the sort of the one-stop shop thing, like a little bit like the Chapter 2 tower. Maybe we're talking a little bit like the Factor 2.
Spoiler alert.
Osmo Rocket Pocket, JD, what is it called? What is it actually called?
The Chapter 2 tower.
No. Well, yes, I did say the Chapter 2 tower, but so that's kind of the one-stop shop of theirs. But then you've got Factor 2, the van.
Austro van.
Austro van.
Yes.
Thank you. So doesn't have the big...
Or the SL7.
Or the SL7,
Yeah.
exactly. It doesn't have that big cutout thing at the rear, which I find affects me. Now, have you had any experience, because you're a little bit like me in the sense you've been riding the Devel for so long, have you had any experience recently on a different bike that you've kind of felt?
I don't... I have. I'm not sure... but that's kind of the thing. I think they're coming together. I don't think you would notice that much difference between the Aeroad and the Ultimate these days, unless you really care about that weight, which is why I think most people just pick the Aeroad anyway, because it's in the layup now. Like I have to admit, like I've been wrong on bikes because the new Cervelo S5, I would never have thought that was... It's heavy. Okay, it's heavy, but I would never have thought it was actually a really good bike. And I rode one over in Europe. I rode Lockheed's. He's got one. What they've done in the layup is pretty incredible. It's almost as if it's got this hollow feeling in the frame when you sort of tap it. It's this very light, hollow feeling, and you ride it, and it feels amazing, but it does not look like that from the side. Unless the people that have one or have ridden one will kind of know what I'm saying, but you can't. You look at it from the side and you go, that looks heavy and probably rides like crap. It doesn't in these latest generation or these brands that are really tweaking the layups. I think there is a lot of... I was not a fan of them before, but there's obviously gains there.
Does the S5 have some sort of gimmicky compliance thing around the rear?
It's got nothing. As far as I'm aware, it's got absolutely nothing.
So yeah, I got a bit of a theory on this at the moment that the bikes that have managed to come up with a solution for the rear of the bike to fix that compliance thing that aren't using the gimmicky type things now are the ones that are actually sort of... they've managed to achieve, I suppose, a better ride quality. Yeah,
through a better layout. Yep. But I think that's a bit of a different story because the S5 versus the R5, I can see a reason there. I mean, the S5 probably... I think that the weight difference between an S5 and an R5 at a similar level is pretty big. I think maybe like 600 grams. Whereas it seems like they haven't released the weight of the new Ultimate, but at least just from what I have, as far as I'm aware, the weights are kind of closer between the Aeroad and the Ultimate. That might change when they release the bike. It might be 6.7 kilos or something. But
at the end of the day, I'm still talking about a $14,000 bike. Like, have we lost the plot? Like Francis Cade's been doing some pretty interesting stuff recently on his channel about these AliExpress bikes. Like, is that potentially where we head, or?
No, I reckon there'd be those things would ride terribly. And GC Performance, they got the Dogma versus the Velo build have come out with this Dogma look, and it looks identical. The way they've laid up, I guarantee they would ride completely different. And it's what you can't tell just from looking at it. If you picked up those frames and tapped them in different areas and got a feel for them and then rode them, I reckon that Velo build thing would not ride anywhere near as well as the more expensive one.
Yeah.
Just because they look the same, I think the layups that brands are doing now makes a big difference.
And I think on that recent one that Francis did, it had a UCI stamp on it, right? So that's basically a load of bullshit because, well, it's not bullshit because they still would have got the actual certification from the UCI, and they obviously did this stuff with Devel. Now, that's all good and well, but the point of the UCI thing is a litigious-based thing, that in the sense that if you ever have an issue with that bike, that the UCI can go back to that original manufacturer and chase them for issues. But I would guarantee you that if someone did, heaven forbid, the bike snapped in two and they had some sort of horrible crash, that wherever that actual headquarters of that particular manufacturer, good luck finding that person and actually, following that up with anything. So
because it's a safety stamp, right?
100%.
It's not a stamp for how well the frame rides.
No,
exactly. It's not worth shit. The Trek had a recall on their handlebars 2 weeks ago.
Yeah.
And that's got the UCI stamp. I mean,
Yeah.
I don't know. What's the point of the freaking stamp?
Yes. No, it's a bit of a joke, actually. Yeah. So yeah, I don't know. Go check out Francis's stuff. It's pretty good. He's following up a few bits and pieces on the AliExpress bikes. It's not going to be something for me and Jesse. Let us know down below.
We're already seeing a bit of a shitstorm with riders that are going to turn up. It's kind of this slow building snowball where it's each week there's a few more news stories with riders that can't come. Or
so the way this stuff works, right, and this is what I've found out, is that the federations basically pay for the riders to go. So, you know, most of these guys who are going to be doing this bike race are salaried riders on the World Tour teams. Those World Tour teams don't pay for the riders to go and do the national events, like the World Championship style events. So then you've got all the federations looking at it going, Jesus, how much is it costing us to send stuff to Australia? And more than that is all the logistics. And I'd like to point out, at this point, World Tour teams, this is what it's like for the rest of us here in Australia, is because they've got out here and realised, hang on, we need cars, we need vans, we need mechanics, etc., etc.
which you have been hit up for, by the way.
we've been hit up by a couple of South American countries to use our car. And best part of that is they weren't going to fund any of that for us. They weren't going to sort of give us any kind of money. I wanted to go in the car and maybe shoot some video and stuff for you guys. But no, they were like, no, can we just borrow your team car for a week, flog it around the streets of Wollongong, and we'll hand it back to you? So, no, was the answer, Colombia. Anyway, but coming back then to, I suppose, Wollongong itself, what do you think about the venue, the course?
I've never looked at it positively. We've ridden in Wollongong. For those that don't know Wollongong, it's a beautiful part of the world for a tourist. It is terrible, in my opinion, to ride in. Basically, the layout of it is you've got this escarpment hilltop running along the western side. You've got this skinny strip, which is Wollongong, that sits in between that and the coast. So you've basically got only a few roads to choose from, not many bike paths, busy roads too. We've kind of already seen, I think Spain, there was an article came out having a few issues recently because the World Tour teams, it's not in their interest really to let their riders go, especially with this World Tour relegation battle that's going on at the bottom end.
Yep.
You've got all these teams that are fighting to get points in UCI races. They're probably going to be out for 2 or 3 weeks, so they're not going to let their riders do that. So you're starting to see a bit of a drop off in the riders that want to come here, and it's just a bit. I'm very excited for it to have it here as an Aussie, but in terms of the overall race, I think it's not. I'm not overly inspired by the whole thing.
No, look, I kind of feel like I have a little bit of, with what's going on at the moment, specifically with the Australian selection, that there was a lot of controversy around who was selected for it. I think the Caleb thing personally was completely overblown. Like, that bike race is not the same bike race as the Deutschland one that he won by any stretch of the imagination. But what I am sort of hearing is that Bike Exchange, the owner of Bike Exchange, played a role in helping fund the return of those riders. And as we said in the beginning, like, the federation is very much looking after the finances of these particular events. So therefore, if you had something like Jerry Ryan say, I might cover the costs of a particular rider, if you select someone from my team, then maybe a selection has been altered in that regard. We will see. Though I think the dynamic there is kind of interesting because, like, Bike Exchange, aren't they? They're well and truly in the
They are, yeah. Like, they're one of the teams down the bottom of the rankings. I think, I haven't been keeping super up to date, but they were, at least in the last couple of months, they were getting mentioned as potentially in that danger zone down the bottom. But money, I mean, again, it's expensive to come here. I think Cycling Ireland aren't sending a team at all, which is a shame. So then you've got this, it becomes quite sad when you're looking at a race and you're going, well, so-and-so's not here and this nation's not here, but just because it costs so much money, because it is all the way over here. So happy that it's here. Really good vibe, big excitement amongst a lot of the local clubs here, sort of getting around it. But in terms of the actual racing, it's, can't say that I'm Itching for it.
So that's Worlds. It'll be in a couple of weeks. Let us know your thoughts down below, whether you think it'll be a shit show or not. We hope certainly not. I've been bemoaning a good bit recently about the state of domestic cycling, but Jesse, guys are still going pro. Like, so recently here in Australia, we had Dylan George get a nod. We've had
Cam Scott
get a nod.
Jensen's player rights
gone across.
Yep, he's gone.
You know, got guys coming through the NRS, well, coming through the Australian system. But what we're not seeing is Americans coming through. What's going on?
Where's the red, white, and blues? It's there. I think it's because they're kind of in a little bit in their little bubble, and we saw this. So there was, I don't know if you watched. It was on GCN Plus, the Maryland Cycling Classic. So they had a pro race, a one-day race there. So bring up the results. So it was interesting because you had lots of good pro teams go, and then you had the domestic teams go up. And it was kind of this, I don't want to like rag on Legion, but it was sort of, they had finally this domestic race. I mean, they're a Conti team. They can, with a plenty of cash, if they wanted, they could go and race in Europe if, anyway. They choose not to.
For a different day.
There's a pro race that showed up on their front door, and it was kind of like the sort of, a little bit of a test for some of the haters out there, to kind of go, well, you know, put your money where your mouth is. How are you going to go in a pro race against not real riders, but professional riders on the World Tour? So the first rider that wasn't on a professional team was from Legion, 16th, Idar Freire, and he was nearly 7 minutes back, you know, pretty much not even in the race. It was just interesting seeing, like, if that race had been in Australia against the teams that our top-level domestic teams, so for example, Bridge Lane, ARA, us even, you know, with our top team, they can match some of those guys. We've seen that they can be up there. Yeah. So, and I think part of that is the teams, our domestic teams really care about that, and it's about sending guys pro. And it seems to be a little bit of that US bubble where you've got a team like Legion who don't seem to care, or I don't know what, but they're not competitive on that scene. They're just doing crits, and they're just a crit team, and it doesn't look like there's really any other teams that are able to step up.
I don't know enough about the US system and how it's sort of progressing, but there does seem to be a severe lack of any kind of road racing. I mean, the only content that we really see on YouTube from the US is a crit or a gravel race. Doesn't really seem to be anything else going on over there. And so, you know, whilst I think like there's in Australia we do, even though we are bemoaning the state of the racing domestically, there is still, we travel well. Like guys, like even what you went and did going to Europe, like you just picked up a bunch of blokes, went and stayed for a month or two in Europe and just raced your asses off. Do you see many bunch of Americans doing that? I don't think you do.
I don't think so. But I don't know what. I think the crit scene is the distraction. Guys will do their week at Tulsa, and that's their big thing. And they don't really, I mean, they're closer to Europe than we are.
Yeah, I know.
And the teams have, I mean, there's seems to be more money. They've got cash. The US dollar goes further than our bloody crappy Australian dollar. You know, there's opportunity there. I just, for some reason...
Ultimately, I think what you're kind of saying is that, like, the US bubble is so good that there's no real desire. Whereas for us, the Australian bubble is shit. You don't want to be in the Australian bubble. You want to get out of the bubble as quickly as possible. Like, you know, I remember having conversations with guys in the team earlier in this year, and I'm like, I don't want you on this team anymore. You're too good for being on this team. Go away. And like, guys want to do that because the next step is for them, you know, to try and make it. Shout, Cooper, doing well. So maybe it's just too good for them.
Potentially, yeah, I think it is. And there's money the teams can get some good cash coming in with sponsors and just race crits, and they don't want to go. But then it's like it comes back to, you know, don't talk smack about how
That's why
good
you
it
wanted
is.
to actually bring this
Oh,
up.
it's it shits me. It's because it's, we're so,
Come on, let's get into it.
Well, there was that. I don't know if maybe this was blown up a bit in the media because they don't seem to do it too much. But Legion, we didn't get selected as juniors because we went. We're so good, but we were so hard done by. We didn't get selected, and now you're a Conti team with stacks of cash, probably one of the most well-off continental teams outside from some of the bigger ones in Europe, and you don't go and do any big races, which is they don't need to. Go do your crits, dominate them. It's great for marketing, but it's when the chat then comes in. It's like you can't have it both ways. So the chat sort of shits me a little bit. And it was kind of that race rocks up and you go, what, like stay in your lane a little bit because it's you're not whether that's a true I think people kind of look for that, like people kind of want to hate a bit, so they look for those stories to come out. It seems like Legion these days and most of the crit teams in Mike's Bikes and stuff, they're just they're more focused on what they're doing and they're not really getting bigger than their boots. Maybe this was a few years ago. Things not to stretch it out.
Where are you, Americans? Why aren't you in the world tour? Let us know. I'm not the only one ranting about domestic cycling. Tell me a little bit more about your scene, guys. Guys, let us know if you think this is a good format. We want to have a bit of fun with this, potentially, do it in car trips, potentially try and do it on a bike ride at some point. So topics that are just coming up in cycling that, look, aren't being discussed necessarily on GCN because that's basically fluff. Lantern Rouge is doing a great job, but he's really concentrating on the actual racing itself. We don't want to go too much into the weeds in that. We just want to sort of cover some of the more interesting topics that kind of happen in and around it. So, guys, let us know if the format is something you're keen on. We're going to keep having a crack at it and potentially try a few different settings for it. Jesse, thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. Oh, we also, like those Q&As we did when we were just driving, I mean, that was stupidly long, but they were a lot of fun. So maybe we do mix a bit of Q&A stuff in here. So let us know what you want us to talk about or if there's specific questions, maybe we can dig into those too.
Cool.
Yeah.
Chat to you soon.
Thanks, guys.